Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Craig Burrell, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Lieutenant Commander Peter Bartholomews. We warmly welcome the family of Private Francis Charles Saxon, whose story will be told shortly. We also welcome the Australian Air Force Cadets, Alpha Bravo, who are joining us for this evening's ceremony. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony around Australia. This evening, wreaths will be laid by family and visitors at the base of the Pool of Reflection. Please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 Australian men and women who have given their lives for us in war and other operations over more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Private Francis Saxon, who was killed while fighting in France during the First World War. Francis Charles Saxon was born in 1881, one of 9 children of Joseph and Carolyn Saxon of the Melbourne suburb of Coburg. Known as Frank to his family and friends, he grew up in the suburbs of Melbourne and worked as a labourer in the years before the war. At one point, he worked as a miner at Barwon Heads near Geelong, most likely in one of the gold mines that prospered in the area at the time. Saxon enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force in July 1915, and after a period of training at Broadmeadows Camp, he sailed for Egypt with a reinforcements group for the 22nd Battalion. British forces had begun evacuating from Gallipoli Peninsula, so the following months were spent training and reorganising in preparation for the AIF's departure for the Western Front. Saxon, however, was hospitalised soon after arriving and did not join his battalion until the week before it sailed for France. The 22nd Battalion entered the line for the first time in France in the relatively quiet sector near the town of Armentières. Here, the Australians carried out a program of acting patrolling and aggressive trench raiding before going into battle. It is likely that Saxon took part in a large-scale trench raid on the night of the 29th of June 1916, during which men of the 22nd Battalion succeeded in breaking into German trenches and taking prisoners. Less than a week later, the 22nd Battalion was sent south to Pozières, where it made its first major attack against the Germans in the fighting on the Western Front. Pozières was in Australian hands by the time Saxon entered the line, although the Germans still held defences to the east. German artillery bombardments had already levelled what remained of the village, causing heavy casualties amongst the Australians. In order to gain control of Pozières Ridge, men of the 2nd Division assaulted the formidable OG lines just outside the village on the night of the 27th of July 1916. Not only did the supporting artillery fail to destroy the German barbed wire entanglements, but German machine gun crews were also alerted to the attack and opened fire as the Australians started to cross no man's land. It was a costly and unsuccessful action that resulted in heavy casualties, with the 22nd Battalion suffering more than 20 killed and 150 wounded. Among them was Francis Saxon, who received gunshot wounds to his chest and stomach. He was carried to the 6th Field Ambulance Dressing Station, but died later that day. Aged 33 at the time, he was buried in the nearby cemetery. His death left a lasting impression on the Saxon family, and his father died not long after. Francis Saxon's name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among more than 60,000 others from the First World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is just one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Francis Saxon, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozieres or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. Thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and good evening.